We're very fortunate here in the United States. We don't have to worry about war. If you're in Syria right now, there's millions of people that are refugees, right? So look at what's happening in, Italy. People are, you're in Bangladesh. You have floods. You go to, Tibet. They've got an earthquake. There are a lot of emergencies, but we are very fortunate in the United States. But half the people that file for bankruptcy is because of medical bills. I had a guy that worked for me in New Jersey. His father-in-law is painting is a painter. He's painting a ceiling, falls off the ladder. He hits the back of his head and becomes blind. Suddenly he's got a father-in-law who's blind. Then his mother-in-law has a stroke. So now they are caring for both of his in-laws. And he gets a call, and I don't even know this, he doesn't even tell me this, until he gets a call during work. His kids, who are like 5 and 7, are calling, Mommy's crying and won't get out of bed. She has a nervous breakdown, and she cannot get out of bed because she's caring for her 2 parents who are now, one is incapacitated, can't move, and the other one is blind. And they're 50 or 60 years old. You don't count on those things. Do you count on Grandma dying? Do you have $800 to fly to Boston to go to Grandma's funeral? If you're spending exactly what you make, the answer is no. What do? You put it on a credit card. Your tires bust. You need to buy new tires, $400. You got $400 for new tires. If not, it goes on a credit card. You're spending exactly what you make. Michael works for Nortel Networks. Big telecommunication, international telecommunications company. Yesterday, they finally finished their bankruptcy. But he works with hundreds of thousands of employees worldwide. The company goes bankrupt. Guess what happens to them all? They lose their job. Michael is a highly desirable employee, promoted several times. They loved him there. But it doesn't matter how good you do your job if the company folds. Through no fault of your own, you can lose your job. Through no fault of your own. Your spouse, my niece, is washing clothes. She lives in the Midwest. They have a basement because of tornadoes. So she's got a big laundry basket filled with towels. One of the towels, unbeknownst to her, falls off the front of the thing. She's going down the stairs. She hits the towel and trips. She shatters her ankle. 6 months she can't work. 6 months she can't work. Now we have a medical leave act or something. You can take up to 6 months of unpaid time off. You're guaranteed to have your job, but can you afford 6 months without an income? American, it's not paid time off, it's unpaid time off. Can you afford that time? So here's what you got to do. You got to spend less than you make. And you got to take that money that you would have spent on a car or another vacation, or sorry, I don't want to give up that trip to Disneyland, I'm sorry. I want a new boat, I want that boat so bad. But you got to be able to fill in these gaps when the bad times happen. I gave this speech 13 years ago when I started teaching. And some of the kids laughed at it. Our parents don't need to worry about this because we live in California. The price of our homes are going through the roof. We have all this equity. And right now, they're hearing the exact same thing. Price of your parents' home probably has doubled in the last 3 or 4 years. Doubled in the last 3 or 4 years. Well, I was hearing that back then. And guess what people did? They took out a mortgage loan. They refinanced their house at a higher value. They took the money out of their house, used it like an ATM machine. They used that money to buy those trips. And they used that money to buy that new boat. And then the market crashed. Do you honestly believe in your entire lifetime you're not going to have another Great Depression, another Great Recession? In every generation, I guarantee you, bad things happen. To the entire country, bad things happen. And if you don't save some money for those days, you're living in a fool's paradise. 7, 8 years ago, when the recession starts, I got kids here at my school that have to move out of this area because their parents cannot afford their mortgage. And they're moving to Lodi, and they're moving to somewhere cheaper. If you want to live in Lodi, great, but it wasn't a great school. Some of those, Los Banos, I don't know, they end up in some, in some area, and it's like, okay, it's cheaper, but you got a 2-hour commute in the morning, your quality of life goes down. They didn't save money for those tough times. They had no backup. I got kids that are homeless here. That Motel 6 or whatever it is on Calabasas, just 4 blocks down, and El Camino, families are living in there. Why are they living in there? And they're only in there for a couple of weeks during the month. The rest of the time, I got a student, she's failing my trig class. I asked her, why aren't you doing your homework? You need to be doing your homework. I'm living in a car with my mom. They were living in a car. You can't use your roof light for too long before the battery dies. It's like, really, you're homeless. And it's like, okay, we have some resources, but you're homeless. You know, you need to get an apartment in the Bay Area, 2 months rent, at $2,000 minimum probably for an apartment. $2,000 times 2 months, $4,000. You need $4,000 just to get into an apartment. Some of these families made enough to pay the rent, but they didn't have the money saved to pay for the deposit. And they couldn't get into an apartment. See what I'm saying? You gotta have some money. I guarantee you some bad things will happen. So Mr. Larson's financial rule number 2, save some money for a rainy day. You gotta plan for these times. And again, it's old-fashioned, but there's a reason it's endured. It's because it's just great advice. Okay, what I really want to know, what I really, really, really want to know, is how I can get rich. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay, I need a little drum roll. Get, come on, keep on. Get rich slowly. Get rich slowly. Oh, see how quickly the drum roll ends now, right? I'm telling you. Okay, Miss Wright, I want to get rich slowly. I want to get rich quick. I'm sorry, I want to get rich today. I want to party with Taylor Swift. Okay, and you don't like her. Don't be like this. Okay, so you want to get rich slowly. Remember the exponential curve. Remember the penny thing. Now you need to. This is when we need to think about that. So you can't get rich. Well, you can get rich. Some people get rich quick, but I want you to invest in the future. I want you to let time make you rich. This is the real secret to getting rich. Guaranteed to get rich. There are other ways to get rich, but they're not guaranteed. Guaranteed to get rich, let time make your money. Now this is not a great example, but when you're 20 years old, let's say you had $20,000, you're going to buy a new car. And instead of buying a nice car for your first car, I suggest you just buy a used car, a clunker, and you take the $10,000 you saved and invest it at $10,000. Or Great Aunt Nancy gives you $10,000 for your college, college fund or whatever. Just take it and invest it. Let's say you can save it. So you put it in and you just forget about it. Now after this, you can buy as many fancy cars as you want, but you're going to just put that $10,000 away and you're just going to let it sit there. And you're going to ignore it. You're going to forget about it. So at the end of 10 years, are you rich? You have $26,000 at the end of 10 years at 10%, and you're earning $2,600 in interest a year. Are you rich yet? Now 10 years is not enough time. So if you're going to retire at 65, you cannot start when you're 55. You cannot. It is not enough time. I don't care how much money you put in there. You could put in my whole paycheck. It wouldn't be a lot of money. 20 years pass. You're a 40-year-old, you have $67,000, you're earning around $6,700 in interest a year. Can you live off $6,700 in interest a year? No. They won't buy you dog food. And most certainly won't pay you for your place here. I hate to say it, $67,000 is the average amount the average American has in their retirement fund. Right now. That's the average amount in people's retirement fund. That's it, $67,000. I spend around $50,000 a year. That's 1 year of my living expenses. 20 years. Not enough time. The average person starts saving for their retirement at around 45. 20 years before they retire. That's when they start. But they're not putting $10,000 away. They're putting like 15, 20 because they have to try and quickly catch up. They're not using time to make their money. They're trying to put a lot of money in, which is not a great strategy. 30 years pass. 30 years, you're 50 years old, you have $175,000. You're making $17,000 in interest. That's more than you get out of Social Security. Social Security is around $15,000. You have this. Now you got 30. You can kind of live off that. A lot of your money here will go towards your rent or whatever, but at least you can afford dog food, right? You can at least afford to live in the Bay Area. But it took 30 years. That's if you start when you're 35. Most people start when they're 45, after their kids are born, after they got the kids at college or high school. That's when they start saving. You need to start earlier. You have to invest in yourself first. 40 years. At the end of 40 years, you got $500,000. You're earning around $4,500 in interest a year. You could live off that. I could take all the interest this year and live off of it. The next year I take all the interest and live off of it. And I still have $450,000. It just keeps generating the money for me. And I live off the interest. I can live off that forever. You see what I'm saying? It's a little money generator. And it cranks out. You're going to live to be 90 years old. Get over it. You're going to get old. You're going to be like me someday. I'm not even close to being old. You're going to be 90 easily. Right? Your generation may live forever. I don't know, invent some new technology. But you're going to live to be 90. So you're not going to want to be working when you're 70 years old. I guarantee you, save some money for your retirement. Help you out in the future. Help yourself for the future. That means you've got to start right away. You start 40 years off the time you're 65. You have to start at 25. You have to start as soon as you come out of high school. Or excuse me, out of college. You got to start saving for retirement. If you continue to let it sit to 70, you got $1.1 million, you're earning 100 grand. That's more than I make as a teacher. Okay? Now, that's not what I did. Here's what I did. At 22-year-old, when I was 22, I began investing in IRAs, individual retirement accounts. And back then, that was what you could invest, $2,000. It's tax-free. I just put it in there and I could forget it. Okay? I've been making around 8% interest. Now, when I was 40, I think I had $40,000. So 20 years passed. But I'll tell you this, when I was like 30, I had enough money that I was getting more than $2,000 a year in interest. I started at 30